This episode of the Western Outdoor News Podcast is brought to you by the Big Fish Challenge, presented by Mercury. If you haven't already, sign up for the Big Fish Challenge at wonews.com. $40 all in and $5,000 in cash and prizes per species. This tournament's value is unmatched.
I didn't really believe him at first, so I turned the boat straight at it, put on my binoculars and looked down there, and there I saw arms in the water.
Hey folks, and welcome back to the Western Outdoor News Podcast. This is episode 29. This week we talk with our northern editor Dave Hurley about the salmon fishing in both the salt and river systems. We also cover the low water conditions and touch on the coming fall striper season.
And to me, stripers are the most amazing fish because you just never know where they go. I mean, they will disappear and then all of a sudden they're going to show up out of nowhere.
But first, we listen in on a quick interview with Captain of the Ocean Odyssey, Rick Scott. Just last week, Scott and his crew were able to save the life of a diver lost at sea. Fishing below the border, the crew of the Ocean Odyssey heard the call and joined the search alongside other sport boats, U.S. Coast Guard, and Mexican Navy.
Conditions were about 10 to 12 knots of wind. I heard the Coast Guard talking to Alejandro's father. Alejandro is the guy that was in the water.
Yeah.
We were about 11 miles away, 12 miles away, and I headed in that direction. We were kind of headed in a different direction, but I went ahead and headed in that direction, seeing if I could help out. I think we got up there about 1:30. Father wasn't real helpful on when he went in the water, whether there was a marker in the water. So we started our search right about where he went in the water. I kind of read the current, saw the current was going to the east, southeast. So I concentrated my search. There was also another boat. The T-Bird was in there. He was helping out also. And we worked to the southeast, to the east, 2 miles, because it sounded like, from what the father said, it was 2 hours. He had gone in the water. We figured he couldn't have gone much farther than that in the current. So we looked in there for a bit, and we did not find him. And I was kind of going to give up because the father, again, wasn't real helpful on information on exactly what time he went in the water, when the last time he saw him was. So I was going to do one more run to the north. We headed up to the north a little bit, northeast, went in east a little bit farther, and we just happened to luck out, and we went about half a mile from him. Chad, my deckhand Chad, was up on the roof. He spotted him downwind of us, and I didn't really believe him at first, so I turned the boat straight at it, put on my binoculars and looked down there, and there I saw arms waving in the water. And we proceeded to go over, pick him up, bring him on the boat. And he was in good condition. He had been in the water for 4.5 hours, which I was really surprised. He had a wetsuit on. Once we got him on the boat, we did a quick med assessment on him and asked me if he needed anything. Kind of funny, the first thing he wanted was a beer, which we did not give him. We gave him water.
Yeah.
Coast Guard happened to be by. Helicopter has been flying around for a couple hours looking for him. They had a cutter down there already. The cutter came over on their little skiff, picked him up, and we put him in the skiff, and he went back to his dad's boat and was on his way home. Very lucky.
Wow, so they actually transferred him back to his dad's boat. So he was in good enough condition.
Yeah, I mean, He got on the boat here. He was obviously a good swimmer. I think he looks like he might have played football, so he was in good condition. And he came on the boat. He wasn't exhausted. He was tired. But, he came on the boat, seemed to be just fine, and didn't have to sit down or anything. He stood up, waited for his dad, and off he went.
Yeah, it's so often that this kind of thing doesn't, when one man's in the water in such a huge area, especially with the wind up like that, that's a tough one to try to locate.
Yeah, if it was myself, I don't think I would have made 4.5 hours. But he was in great shape, so he
great shape,
and he had a wetsuit on, which helped him stay buoyant on the surface.
So your guys' training really came into effect there, as far as you guys, annually do drills to kind of simulate this situation.
We do them monthly, and overboard drills and fire drills and abandoned ship drills. So we were on top of it. We were able to get all the equipment out quick, get him on the boat. Once we got up to him, I would say within a minute and a half, he was on the boat.
So quick. Was he able to stand right away when he got on the boat?
He got on the boat. Like I said, he got on the boat. He stood. He wasn't exhausted. He stood. And
first thing he asked for was a beer.
Yeah, first thing he wanted was a beer.
You did not. I think it's a good idea you did not give that to him.
Of course.
Do you know where he was from?
He's from San Diego, downtown San Diego here, from what I understand.
Okay, and did you catch his last name?
I did. It's Alejandro Crossway.
Kind of like the whole situation and story. I'm glad that this thing ended up how it did. I guess the next question is, how was fishing before and after this whole situation?
Fishing was excellent. Fortunately, we had caught a bunch of fish, so we had time to spare there, and we were able to focus our efforts on helping the Coast Guard and his father find him.
Well, Rick, it was a pleasure meeting you, and thanks to you and your crew, something very special happened it was the day before yesterday, right?
Day before yesterday, yeah.
So it was on your first day out.
Yeah, the crew did very good. We everything as planned, right down to getting them on the boat and doing medical assessment. So it turned out good.
Yeah, very good. Awesome, thank you. And up next is Dave Hurley, our northern editor.
Well, salmon fishing for big fish has been absolutely phenomenal. The hotspots have been the Golden Gate and also out of Bodega Bay. One thing about salmon, though, they do not bite every particular day. And so one day you may go out there and you may limit out very quickly. The next day you may go out there and they may be off the bite. But there's a lot of pressure on the fish right now. We have, up to 140 boats to 200 boats out there on the weekend, trolling between the North Channel buoys and Duxbury. My favorite time is kind of coming up right now because we've got some flat, calm oceans, and that's the time when we're able to drift or mooch for them instead of troll. So they are starting to come in closer, come in shallower. I expect that over the next couple months, we may have a salmon over 50 pounds. There's been a couple over 40 pounds caught this last week. They're starting to move into the river system, and the opener at the barge hole happened this last Sunday, and it was pretty spectacular. I was really surprised because the river is very low, and it is very warm, but the fish have already moved into that deep hole that sits there above the Battle Creek, which is where the Coleman National Fish Hatchery is, and it opened up on Sunday, and that's when you have 100 boats out there in a condensed area, but they landed over 100 fish and using roe or flatfish. So that was a really good omen for what could be a good season in the upper river. I think the lower river is going to be difficult until we get some cold weather around here because the fish aren't staying. There's no reason for them to stay and stage because the water is so warm and it's so low. So they're running all the way up as far as they can get up the system to cold water without waiting. In the next couple of months, you're going to see the salmon start pushing in towards the beaches. You're going to see out in the ocean. The fish that have been offshore will be moving in. You're going to see people moving in closer and closer within really right alongside the shoreline for salmon trolling. And salmon or mooching, and salmon does rule around here. Thanks to the efforts of the Golden State Salmon Association, really pushed the Department of Fish and Wildlife to truck these fish all the way to Baker Beach, which is right at the entrance of the Golden Gate. We've had an incredible return this year, and we should over the next couple years. The problem is when they go into the river system, if it's low. So salmon are absolutely essential. We had a good bite at Fort Bragg that seemed to die out. Those fish are now up at Shelter Cove, which is still open. The salmon season above Shelter Cove, above Horse Mountain in Humboldt County, to the Oregon border, is now closed. It closed on Sunday.
Okay.
So that's an exciting thing.
Now, when we're talking salmon, are we talking more than one species of salmon coming up into these tributaries and up into the rivers?
Well, the only salmon that is allowed to be legally taken is a king salmon. And there is a coho salmon that will come up into the Sacramento River system in limited numbers. There has been a lot of silvers at the start of the season when the season opened up at the end of June. And one of the things that anglers have to be really aware of is the difference between a coho and a king salmon, because these were big silvers. Normally, silver would be less than 10 pounds, but we're talking 12, 14-pound silver salmon. They were being mistaken for a king, and people were getting tickets written because they don't know the difference between the two. It's actually fairly easy to tell the difference between the two. They fight differently as well, but you have to have some experience as well. So it's a mistake that can be made by someone who is not an experienced angler.
Well, visually speaking, I believe it's within the mouth, right, where you're looking.
You look for the black mouth. The coho has that green back.
Okay.
Usually, you'll see a green back, whereas a king salmon's going to bulldog you. And that's what I really love about fighting the king salmon. That they're especially mooching because they will run you around the boat 2 or 3 times, and that's when it gets a lot of fun. And many anglers are losing these fish right now. In fact, they're losing more than they're bringing in because these are big, angry fish. And if you don't have the experience, you don't have the gear, and especially with a barbless hook, you're going to drop some big fish because you have to really keep. If you point the rod towards the fish, you might as well say goodbye. It's a challenge to get them in. It's not. They're not coming in on their own, especially when they see that boat.
Yeah, it's got to use that shock absorber of a rod to keep the head shakes and the directional changes from that hook just popping out. Being barbless, I know is a tough fishery, but if you can keep a good bend in the rod the whole time, that's got to be key. Speaking of gear, what gear do you use, and what do you kind of recommend as far as doing this salmon fishing?
Well, if you're going to mooch, which is my preferred method, you're going to need to have a flexible rod, fairly solid reel in terms of. It's not necessarily the gear ratio that makes a difference because you're going to just be dropping that bait down there anywhere from 15 to probably 70 feet at the most. But it's a matter of you're going to have a flexible rod because you don't set the hook on a mooch bite. You just allow them to. It's very similar to fishing for a halibut in terms that they're going to take the bait. If you touch your rod right away, they could be dropping the bait. Give them a little bit of line, where you're going to allow them to take it down, rather than setting the hook. You're just going to once you see it go down in a manner that starts to bend the rod, you're going to start reeling, and you're just going to start reeling nice and smooth, and bring them up. Once they're hooked, then sometimes when you're mooching, you don't even realize they don't even realize that they're hooked. They come right up, and but then once they figure it out, then you got your hands full.
Yeah,
A flexible rod, I think, is really important. I think
very parabolic rod.
what's happening now is people have been using 20-pound mono, and
Yeah,
they've been getting broken off too. So 25 is really a minimum on the for salmon right now. And if you're going to mooch, and I always prefer a fluorocarbon leader anyway. Salmon miss the bait a lot. If you watch them on a camera for trolling, and you can see it, they're going to come up. They may hit that bait several times before they finally actually get it. And so I even under those circumstances, I still like the fluorocarbon because they're getting a lot of gear thrown at them right now.
yeah, I can only imagine it's been pretty crowded up there.
They're getting a lot of gear thrown at them.
So a good long parabolic rod, and then a good quality drag system is probably important. Something that's gonna remain smooth at those, not so high a drag pressures you don't got to worry about, but just a good smooth drag.
Good smooth drag, and when the fish is going, you don't have to reel. You can let them go, and just keep that pressure on them. And then when you get the chance, it's similar to fighting everything else. You're going to be, gaining a few inches at a time, a few feet at a time, but not be in a hurry. You can't be in a hurry. Lots of salmon have been lost because they were brought in way too green, and you made it so hard on that net, the person with the net, because the net is a key aspect in getting a salmon. Obviously, you're going to use a really big net. You may get one good shot at it, and a lot of fish have been knocked off at the net. So you want to bring them in to the point where they're going to be able to just come up, and they're going to have that moment where they're going to be laying there, and you're going to be able to, because you see these guys, they have to stretch out sometimes long ways to get those fish, because you may get one good shot at them.
Yeah, and did you say you preferred fishing for these salmon when they're out still in the salt?
Oh, absolutely. I
Yeah,
mean,
do they seem to fight the hardest? So obviously they're not getting into that warm water yet. They haven't started deteriorating into the fresh water, and they just have a little more fight in them. And are they more willing to bite? Obviously, too, in the salt water, they're still in a feeding pattern.
They fight hard in both environments, in my experience. You got to remember in the river, they're not going to be able to run down to the bottom, so they're going to be fighting in shallower conditions. So, because you may be only fishing in 20 feet of water, so they give you a run for your money in the river as well. They can really do that, particularly when they're first coming into the system. So either way, you're in for a good run. I like them in the ocean because I like being in the ocean for one thing. There's just nothing like being out in the ocean. The other thing is the meat is generally in far better condition. You have that really pink krill fed or that orange meat. There's nothing like that. Usually when they come in the river, they've been there for a while. People are going to smoke them as opposed to preparing them in other ways.
What is your favorite way to prepare salmon?
Oh, I like to grill them. I like to have nice, little grilled fillets there, a little on the barbecue with a little seasoning, a little olive oil, a little rosemary, just a little preparation like that. There's a lot of different ways you can make salmon. I keep it very simple.
Very good. Well, the cover this week, barge hole salmon.
It was a Brad's Killer Fish, size 16,
Okay.
by Jeff Goodwin. And it seems like a lot of these guides prefer these. Well, they'll use a flat fish, they'll use a quick fish, usually in those chrome and chartreuse type color patterns. But the Brad's Killer Fish is also one in the market, and a lot of the guides seem to like that particular bait.
Yeah, yeah, and I did notice a lot of the guides nowadays too are something kind of cool that I've noticed is they're using the newer style trolling motors with the spot lock rather than the anchors.
Mm-hmm.
Have you has that kind of become it seems more efficient when you do get hooked up, you're able to chase a fish if you have to. Maybe help some of the snagging situations where guys above you are hooking your anchor while they're fishing and things like that.
Well, let's think about this. I've always looked at it like this: as technology has improved, unfortunately, in many ways, the fishing has gotten worse. But any of the reputable guides are going to have the best technology possible, because whether it's electronics, whether it's their gear, whether it's their power pole, or they're going to have whether they're going to have the autopilot on their trolling. Any of those technological advances make a huge difference when you're out there in terms of how many fish you're actually going to be able to bring in, especially as the pressure mounts on the fishery. If you're looking at 140 boats inside the barge hole, then you're going to have some system where you're not going to get snagged, because it could be incredibly frustrating to be on top of each other. So yeah, any of those systems that work, I think, and your reputable guides are going to be always preparing and getting the best equipment possible. And there's one thing about the industry. The industry continues to amaze by coming out with better and better products all the time.
You said 140 boats approximately there in Barge Hole. How large is that area for 140 boats to be in? Because I'm not familiar.
Not large enough for that many boats. We're talking boats on top of boats.
So you think a lot of the losing of fish is due to that situation?
It's certainly a possibility. You look at any of the places that are highly contested, whether it's the outlet hole on the Feather River, you see this trend happen a lot. I mean, obviously the barge hole is one place where boats are going to cram in there, and I'm not certain if I'm absolutely right on the number of boats. I know that it's very crowded. You see that happening many places. Like right now, there's been a striper bite at Hogan. The minute somebody hooks up, boats come flying in from all directions to move in on that. You see that in the bay when there's a white sea bass bite. You'll see one boat hooked up. You'll see about 7 or 8 boats come flying in there to get on top of that.
So it's the same as down here.
Is it the same as down there in Southern California?
Yeah, when you stop on a kelp patty or you stop on a spot of tuna fish, there'll be no boats around you, and as soon as you stop, they start coming out of nowhere.
That is that's always a limiting factor in terms of being able to, because you're going to put the bite down eventually if you don't put it down immediately. So that's why most guys who fish the river prefer to fish during the week as
Yeah.
opposed to the weekends.
Mhm.
And when you're working, you don't have the option to be off work during the week to be able to fish. So I understand it, but I mean it's a matter of everybody working together as much as possible.
Good etiquette.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I wrote an editorial on that a couple of weeks ago. It's just etiquette. We just have to be able to, we have to have a social contract with each other to be able to enjoy what we're doing, but then also respect each other enough that we make this a pleasurable sport that people are going to enjoy. We don't anchor on top of each other. We give each other space, and then people are going to be more willing to share.
What's the next section of river that opens up? Is there another section that's going to be opening up in the near future here?
No, the way it works like this: the McCullummy, Feather, the American, and the Sacramento are open for river salmon. There are some different closures based on different dates that are coming up, and I don't have those directly in front of me. But some are open and all the way till the end of December. Some close at the end of October. So people have to be really aware of the regulations. There are no salmon taken on the San Joaquin River at any point. There are salmon that come into the San Joaquin River. In fact, the San Joaquin River had an incredible salmon run up until the end of the 50s when the water diversions from the Friant Dam really ended the commercial fishery. Believe it or not, there was a commercial salmon fishery in the San Joaquin Delta up till 1958. In fact, my great-grandfather and my grandfather were commercial fishermen. I still have the nets in a garage that I have, the nets and the floats, the handmade floats that were used during that time there were commercial gill nets that were used for salmon. If you can believe that, yeah. You think about it, that's within my lifetime. You can see the amount of changes that have been made. That's just a very short period of time. So it's pretty amazing. But yeah, the San Joaquin there is no run on the San Joaquin anymore. Well, the San Joaquin ran dry for many, many years in a 60-mile stretch. So
Yeah.
pretty much took the. But there are fish that will come up in the river. They just cannot be. They have to be released.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you had just kind of touched a little bit on a small striper bite that happened up there. What's the best time of year for that? That's coming in the fall, right?
In the Delta, we're going to see a run come in the fall. I like the months of October and November. Those are
Mm-hmm.
my favorite months, for trolling, as well as also I like to soak bait too. I learned from Jay Sorensen, the originator of the California Striped Bass Association. He had a reputation of being the best bait fisherman in the Delta. I got the opportunity to fish with him many, many times, and there's nothing like having that striper pick up that butterfly shad or a bullhead or a mudsucker and take off on a run, let them go, let them go, let them go, letting that clicker sing, and then just engaging the reel and bringing them over. So that's in October and November for ordeal, but they're already trickling in. This has been a very strange year for striped bass. Normally in July and the months of June and July, you're going to have those bass come into the bay. They're going to be
Mm-hmm.
sitting on the rock piles. They're going to be loading up on anchovies. This was a very unusual year. We did not have that occurring. Only in the last couple of weeks. And to me, stripers are the most amazing fish because you just never know where they go. I mean, they will disappear and then all of a sudden they're going to show up out of nowhere. So in the last, I would say, month, they started to come back into the Delta. The only thing I can think of is they were upriver somewhere and they came back into the Delta. Now we're starting to see them on the eastern side of San Francisco Bay and the San Pablo Bay area.
Okay.
And so for some reason, they came back into the Delta. We should have our biggest push somewhere in, like I said, October, November. But usually August, towards late August, you're going to see some big fish, some big females start coming upriver again. Every year at the end of August, you see big females get caught somewhere around the Rio Vista area.
I've fished up by Big Break right there where the
Mhm.
San Joaquin comes in. What's that? The 160 bridge?
Yes, the Highway 160 bridge, huh?
Yeah, I fished that zone a little bit for striped bass, and I'd love to get up there again, especially in the fall. That sounds like it's the time to do it.
Oh, there's a couple ways that you can fit. People now are into throwing plugs. So you see a lot of the guys that are really good at throwing big topwater baits for stripers. They're all catch and release guys, fortunately. And almost every trolling person is going to release any fish over 10 pounds. Because we know that even though the striped bass is vilified as the reason why the salmon are dying, anybody that can take a look at the history knows that striped bass and salmon coexisted in the Delta for years and years and years in tremendous numbers. It was only until the major water diversion started taking place that the populations of all species in the Delta started to go down. So we really highly encourage releasing striped bass over 10 pounds for a couple reasons. One of them, they don't contain the amount of mercury. And the other reason is that, those are our breeders. Those are the ones that are going to make the difference and keep that. Stripers are here to stay. I mean, people have to recognize that. You're never going to eradicate this species, even though it was an introduced species. It is the staple fish for the entire Northern California Delta fishery, all the way from Calusa to Pacifica out in the ocean. It's every man's game fish. It's the one that attracts every tackle shop in that whole area would either close or be close to closing if there were no striped bass, because it is the one fish you can catch different ways throughout the entire year. That's what I love about them, because you can catch them on top water lures, you can catch them on swim baits, you can catch them on live bait, you can catch them on cut bait, you can catch them trolling, you can catch them drifting anchovies in the bay. You can use sardines. Every part of the river has something different that they use for the stripers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're very adaptable fish.
Yeah. It's an awesome fishery, and I'd love to start taking a little bit more advantage of it, and definitely in the fall want to try to make it up there, maybe this season.
That would be great.
Yeah,
We could
done
do
some.
that.
I like to throw lures. I was a tournament saltwater bass angler down here for quite a while, and I've done quite a few freshwater tournaments as well. And I do like fishing big plugs and stuff for those striped bass. It's definitely fun.
No, they sound like a huge waterfall or just a blow up. When they blow up on top of that lure, it's pretty amazing. But like I said, they're an amazing species.
Well, in other words, up there, I did see in this week's Western Outdoor News that the first of quite a few frog tournaments just kind of started going off. How did those kind of go this last weekend?
Well, they had quite a few participants. They had 3 divisions for the Ultimate Frog Challenge. That's the second. The original Frog Challenges of Frog Tournaments this coming weekend, the Snag Proof Open. You need some absolutely warm conditions for that. The wind blew. They had the cool part about that particular tournament is that they had 3 limits at the very top. It's 3 fish on Saturday. They fished the afternoon tide on Saturday. They fished the morning tide on Sunday. So they get 2 different tides that they work with. So it's not like it can be consistent in terms of it really challenges the anglers. And you're going to see that again with the Snag Proof. And then they came in at 20.13, 20.10, and 20.09. So they're within 0.4 hundredths of each other for the top 3 spots over a 6 fish limit. We're not a lot of big fish caught, and that was most likely due to the conditions. You really need that warm weather. There's been a lot of spraying in the Delta the last several years. And when I say spraying, I'm talking about herbicide spraying. So we don't see the type of frog, what they call frog water, that we've had in the past, because a lot of that grass has been killed in the South and Central Delta.
Yeah, that's that cheese that everyone likes to fish, correct?
I like to fish that cheese,
Yeah. And they're spraying for that, or are they spraying for what was the other non-native that's choking up a lot of the system?
Well, they spray for all the different, you have the Ageria gensa, which is the aquarium weed. You have hydrilla, and you also have hyacinths. The ones that are floating, they're the ones that basically choked up a number of marinas in the South Delta. But the spraying's been going throughout the entire Delta from Freeport on down. So we have the Snag Proof coming up this week. Randy Pringle, the fishing instructor, is the director for that particular tournament. That is the original frog tournament. They're only allowed to use Snag Proof or scum frogs. The scum frog has become a really popular frog up here the last several years. A frog bite is pretty cool. I imagine you've caught fish on frogs before. I had about an 8-pounder on, and I realized that not every time you set the hook, you're going to get a hook set on a frog. I found that out the hard way.
Yeah, a delayed hook set is best.
Yeah, I did not do that. But yeah, it's a challenging. I like the idea of these types of tournaments because it gives some people something different to look forward to hone different techniques, highlights different manufacturers, allows some competition between the manufacturers, and it's not just your standard bass tournament. So yeah, we have those two things coming up, and we're going to be moving into, as the summer goes on, there'll be less and less bass tournaments around here. But then, as the colder water comes, cold times come, you're going to see the ramping up on the local lakes.
Yeah, the local lakes start to cool when you start getting those fall conditions, and those bass start to move around quite a bit, and feed up for winter.
A couple other things that are happening I can talk about is we've had some huge kokanee up in the north part of the state. Lake Berryessa has been kicking kokanee up to 20 inches, which is pushing 3 pounds. People drive all the way over to Flaming Gorge to catch those type of fish. Berryessa has been really good in terms of large fish, but you got to be on your game, because what's happened now is every year those fish were in open water. They're starting to school up. Now they're getting ready, and they're in that pre-spawn mode. They're down there on the bottom. They're hugging the bottom, and they're getting ready to make their move up into the river arms for an attempt to spawn. So the guys that are really good know how to go down to the bottom and entice strikes from those fish, because they're not eating right now. They're striking out of aggression. So they're using bigger lures like the Pro Troll kokanee killers. So we're seeing that, and you're going to see that progressively move up the hill. Lower elevation lakes, you're going to see the kokanee start to turn. As you get into higher elevation lakes, all the way up to Tahoe and Donner, which are traditionally the last two lakes that turn for where the kokanee start to turn, lose their scales, get the hook jaws on the male. You're going to see that pattern taking place over the next couple of months. But the bite was really hot, and now it's slowed down in some of those lakes. But a good thing is Pardee has taken off again, because it really didn't get a lot of pressure this year because it had one tournament in April, and then people went on to other things. Kokanee fishing is a big sport up here in Northern California. They'll draw close to 100 boats on a major tournament.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, I'm familiar with Pardee. I've fished it a couple times. We were fishing mostly bass.
You were looking for that world record smallmouth in there, I'm sure.
Yep, we were definitely fishing for smallmouth and for big ones.
Yeah, that world record smallmouth is probably in there, because any lake that has kokanee has got big bass in it.
Yeah, my guess is there or somewhere up in Idaho.
Either that or Trinity Lake's another place too that it could be.
Yeah.
But yeah, spotted bass, smallmouth, largemouth bass, they love those kokanee. So I always thought the bass organization should be very thankful for the kokanee power and Project Kokanee in terms of making sure that these fish get planted into the lake, because for whatever reason, I think they slide down easy. That's the thing. You see big bass. Anytime you have a good kokanee lake, you're going to find big bass.
Yeah, it's that high fat content.
I don't think the effort is all that much. I mean, they're fast, but the bass, they're, like I said, they're an amazing species. They survive regardless, because they're so adaptable in terms of what it is they can eat. But yeah, they love that kokanee. So we've had a good kokanee bite there. Trout fishing is starting to take off now too, at a couple of different lakes. Lake Comanche is a good option, but you got to deal, just like everything else up here. We have to deal with low water, difficult ramp conditions, and recreational boating during the day. So if you're going to go fishing, you got to get on the water early and get off early, regardless of where you're at.
Yeah, same thing goes for down here. A lot of low lake levels and ramp closures, and definitely busy with. It seems like more and more people are going outdoors and enjoying it, which is great, but it is making it a little bit more difficult at the ramp these days.
Until people learn really how to, I think one of the things we all have to learn is patience. I mean, we want to get on the water so fast, we want to do our thing, but we got to think back to when we were first learning to back down a boat, back down a trailer, and get our boat in the water. It didn't come as easy for us, and you're right. Boat sales have been fantastic. License sales have gone up. Hunting sales have gone up. That's one of the things about the last year and a half of the pandemic that has made a difference. You got to make reservations way in advance to get a camping spot now. So there's been tremendous interest in the outdoors, and I think that's wonderful overall.
Well, I guess as we move kind of right along here, and we're talking about water dropping, and then I'm actually looking at the paper now, and the San Luis Reservoir striped bass, that fishery is affected by the dropping water as well.
Well, there's no question about it. In fact, they all are. And in fact, if you look at the front page of the latest one issue, you take a look at two lakes that are really critical in terms of launch ramp conditions. One is Clear Lake, which is one of the best bass fisheries in the United States, if not the world. And right now we have one, possibly two functioning ramps, and the ramp may be out of the water by the end of this month, which would eliminate any future tournaments until the lake comes back up. Bass fishing has been really good there. The same thing at Lake Orville. King salmon has been absolutely spectacular there. There's been fish up to 14 pounds landed this year. But
Wow.
but yeah, I know it's just been amazing. But getting in there now, there's only one ramp. You need a four-wheel drive. The lake just continues to drop. In fact, the guys that have been doing so well there are shying away from it because they're losing so much gear in the trees on the low water levels. So those are two lakes that have been affected by that. San Luis has been affected, and it's only at 21% now. It
Yeah.
will rise as they start pumping from the delta in the coming months, and that'll continue to take place. But you're looking at a lower level of water, concentrating the fish more. The issue there is the basalt ramp is going to be out of the water for a couple of months. They have to do a couple of weeks, excuse me. They have to do some repairs on that ramp, and the only ramp that is available there is now the Dinosaur Point ramp, which is usually sometimes a better place. You have to drive all the way around the lake for that, but it's a better place to launch when the wind is high. And the wind, it's like a wind tunnel in there. You have to be very cautious to be on that lake. When those warning lights come on, it's time to get off. Those come on for a reason.
Yeah, no, I've read the stories, and I've heard about the high winds that can, and I've driven past. I went to school up in Cal State University, Monterey Bay, so I would take that route sometimes just to drive past the lake, and
Sure.
I've seen 4 to 5 foot wind chop.
So you're a sea otter then, I take it, huh?
I went there for a year and a half, and I ended up leaving and coming back down south and fishing more than I was going to school. So
Well, I went to Humboldt State University, and we had a lot of guys that were more into fishing than they were into school. So yeah, but no, that's like a wind tunnel there. You have to know what you're doing. It's one again. San Luis is one of those lakes. Roger George of Rogers Guide Service, he has it wired, for whatever reason. But it's because he puts so much time on that lake.
yeah,
Always is, good fishermen are always going to be paying attention to what's going on. They're not going to be afraid to try different things. They're not going to be afraid to innovate. They're not going to be afraid to learn from other people, and they're going to put in their time. And that's really what it's all about. You have to really admire these guys that put in the time to really learn the sport, because it's not something that comes easily, particularly for species that are a lot harder. That's why things like big brown trout and huge striped bass, they don't come easily. They have to be earned. Big largemouth bass, like your trophy smallmouth that you wanted, those things have to be earned, and they're earned by
yeah.
time in the water, good gear, paying attention to what's going on, and being willing to get skunked in the event that you're going to be rewarded.
Yeah, one thing that always amazed me when I was guiding was just my observation compared to my customers, and what I was observing and what I would bring to light to their eyes was just huge. They would notice things, small things and large things, even that were things that I thought were huge. It's just the power of observation while you're fishing is tremendous.
Yeah, I always watch the guide, or when I'm out on a party boat with or a six pack, because I'm watching what they're watching, because I know they're always paying attention to what's going on. They're looking at the other boats. They're looking to see what's happened. They know. You say, "Oh, where did so and so go?" Oh, they'll tell you right away. They know exactly where that certain boat went. They don't even have to look on the radio, get on the radio to figure it out. They know already. They're always paying attention. They're looking for sign. They're looking for birds diving. They're always, oh, their head's on a swivel. They're always thinking. So you were a guide. I always watch the guides because I'm always amazed and saying, man, You just train yourself to be so observant.
Yeah, being observant is huge, and I'm gonna hopefully start writing something about that whole situation and just the power of observation here in the next few weeks. Maybe get that into print here pretty soon.
That'd be a great article, because I think it's something that is not really talked about all that much. It's something that is not really paid attention to, but
What it
overall,
does is it takes away a lot of the secrets, because really what most of the secrets are just from us observing the conditions around us. And people are, well, what's your secret? Well, I just pay attention.
you pay attention, but you also know what to look for too, or you
Yeah.
learn what to
So,
look for. You learn
yeah,
what.
by paying attention, you start to notice things and patterns, and you do start to learn your water essentially. So
Yeah, I fished many years in the bay with Jim Smith, the legendary Jim Smith, captain of the Happy Hooker, and he knew every rock. He knew when those fish were going to be on that particular rock on that particular tide at that time, and it's just knowledge, paying attention to what's going on, and he would know, okay, well, the water's muddy, they are not going to be here, and he's absolutely right. You learn to listen to somebody like that, because their knowledge is incredible.
sometimes the best thing to do is just to sit back and listen and observe.
Yeah, that's what I find out. I see guys that spend a lot of money to go on trips with guides, and then they want to do what they want to do. There's a reason why you hired them, because they're out there every day, or most every day. You hired them for their knowledge, for their information, just like you buy Western Outdoor News for our knowledge and our information. We're going to be providing you, and it's always, to me, it's like you listen, you get the information, you learn from it, you put it in your toolbox. That's why you brought them out there, not to say, hey, let's go out and catch stripers on the beach right now, because that may not be what's going on. You have to listen to them, and they're going to tell you what they think is going to be the best option. Well, we've covered a lot of subjects today, haven't we?
Yeah, I think we should just probably wrap it up right about here. We've covered a lot. We kind of went through the whole paper and everything that's going on north as far as the bay and the rivers and the salmon fishery. I'm hoping we get to talk again soon about the next coming thing. Maybe this fall, get up there and do a little bit of striper fishing.
Hey, we would love that.
Yeah,
I would love that too, because I want to get out and, like I say, that's where I cut my teeth on in the Delta. I'm not far from it now. I'm not as close as I was previously in Stockton, but I'm close enough that I can get over there in a very quick period of time. And if you come up here, maybe we can pull something together.
All right, folks, and that's going to wrap it up for episode 29 of the Western Outdoor News Podcast. For more information on the Big Fish Challenge, events, or charters, check out wonews.com. Thanks.